you're on Facebook Live right now, then you know that you are here for another edition of I Didn't Know That, presented by Stoffer Mortgage. I am Karaoke Bob, along with Mike Stoffer. We've got a great guest in store for you tonight. We thank you for dropping by, as always. And before we get too far, let's bring Mike Stoffer on. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I am well, Bob. How are you?
I'm terrific. I can't complain.
You look terrific tonight, by the way.
You'll feel better about that. Yeah, you've said that the past couple times that it seems like.
Well, I try to get the show off to a good start.
I'm emotionally, a little better than I have been. So I'm pretty pleased with how everything's going. How's everything going with you?
Well, okay. I had a little difficulty earlier this evening.
What happened?
Thanks to you. Oh, this lighting thing you've got.
Yeah, but now it looks terrific. I don't know, whatever you did, you solved it. Thanks to my great advice, you were able to make things, come around and look the way they're supposed to. So
once again, Bob, great job.
I'd
be lost without you.
And everybody that's joining us now, you can comment with us live, and we can kind of chat with you that way. We encourage you to be involved, especially when we have the guest on. And Mike, tell us a little bit about our guest.
Well, before I talk about Jared, I want to let you know that the I Didn't Know That mugs are done and ready to go. Fantastic. And Deirdre is behind those mugs. You and I should be receiving our mugs who knows when. But
I can't wait.
And every guest that comes on the show gets an I Didn't Know That mug. How about that?
That's great.
And we should maybe give some away to some people that show up on a regular basis.
I think you're right.
So I've done a little fiddling around here before bringing Jared on for a reason, because I've had a number of people that say they have a difficulty getting into the show. And they say they usually are able to get on right about 2 or 3 minutes into it. So it's part of the reason why I'm just, because I think our guest is so good.
You're going to stall.
I'm going to stall just a little bit. So as people get online,
Dave Patterson, Big Dave will.
Big Dave is in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll make sure that you get in on that contest.
So the key is, Bob, the key is, as you said, if you have questions about wine, throw them in the comments, and we're going to keep an eye on them. And we'll maybe use, one of your questions. So our guest tonight is Jared Gray. And Jared is a really fascinating guy. He is a wine expert. And he is, hidden away in a store called Home Buys here in North Canton, out on Whipple Avenue. And you walk in there, and it's just, a store with a wine area, and in it is Jared. Now, what's so great about Jared is that we all have things that cause us anxiety in our life, right, Bob? For instance, you might be doing a presentation and you're nervous about doing a presentation. You might meet somebody you're attracted to and don't know what to say.
Nervous right now.
If you're me, going to a dinner party and having to bring a bottle of wine is unnerving. I know nothing about wine. Okay. So I met Jared and I was captured by him. And I want to say thank you to a good friend of mine, Mark Seibert, for recommending that I talk to Jared. And he kind of helped get him on the show. So without further ado, I think I've wasted enough time. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to get on. We're going
to do this.
I want to bring on Jared Gray.
Great.
And
Jared, how are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Hey, it is a pleasure to have you on. And by the way, in homage to you, I'm going to have some wine during the show.
Very good.
I have some rare red blend.
So I'm glad because I'm going to give you what my advice is. And I want to see if Jared would say the same thing. And because I'm not a wine expert, I'm just Mr. Know-it.
Yeah.
No, but I would because I would just tell you what I do when I'm bringing wine to a dinner party or to an event is I go for exactly that. I go for a red blend, something that's going to be pretty easy on all the palates, and I try not to get too fancy because you don't know, the type of wine drinkers you're going to have. And I think red blends are kind of universally accepted, and they're usually pretty easygoing, and they're not going to kind of, you know, be too out there on the palate.
So I walked in today and I said, Jared, I need a bottle of wine. And the first thing Jared did was he looked at me and he said, you seem like kind of a guy that doesn't know what he's doing. And you seem kind of cheap to me.
You have
so I look at him shaking his head. And so he goes over and he's like, here's a bottle of wine. And so he gave me this rare red blend wine, $10 for this wine. So, you know, he's got me down. I mean, he sized me up. So not only is Jared excellent at wines, but he is a psychiatrist as well. So Jared, let's start.
I have to go, guys. I'm sorry. I'll duck out. No, I'm just kidding.
So let us, yeah, I know, because you would be,
You'll be writing prescriptions by the end.
And I wore a red t-shirt, by the way, if you can tell this is red for the wine, for the color of wine I'm going to be drinking.
I wore red headphones.
Excellent.
Perfect.
So Jared, let's start from the beginning. Okay.
All right.
And what I mean from the beginning is I bought this bottle of wine. What's the proper way to uncork some wine?
The proper way to uncork some wine. All right. So do you have a corkscrew with you?
I do. I have a corkscrew, and I've already opened it because I wasn't going to do this live. So you're just going to have to tell me.
Okay. Well,
so is there a proper way to open wine?
Well, I don't have a bottle with me, but yeah, there is. So if you have a cork, which a lot of them do, some of them don't, but if you have a cork, you want to take your foil cutter and go around the bottom of it and take that off. And then if you have like a waiter's cork, which is real small, it's about a couple inches long. They're cheap, but they're the best things to use. My wife has all this fancy garbage that's a lot of money, and I only use the waiter's corkscrew. And you just go right down the middle and use the double hinge, and you slowly pull it out as to not break the cork. And that's the best thing that I think you can use is that double hinged waiter's corkscrew. All those $30 and $40 rabbit ear things and whatnot, they work, but they break over time, as do waiter's corkscrews. But those are the best things to have. But yeah, you want to go right down the center. And if you have a corkscrew, like a waiter's corkscrew, do you have yours with you? What did you use? Did you use a waiter's corkscrew?
I think I chewed it off.
You chewed through it?
I chewed right through it. I think I've got. It's not here right where I can grab it, because I didn't know that. I didn't know it was. I mean, as we were warming up for the show, I assumed it was going to be important, because everything seems to be important when it comes to drinking wine.
This is true.
I mean, so it's a long, it's a long thing, like opening champagne. Like, it's got the big, the big cork, you grind it down, and and
does it have the levers?
Yeah, it's got the levers. Yep.
Okay, so that's probably the second best one to use.
Okay.
Is that, and they're usually not as expensive, but I like the waiter's corkscrew. So those are the best. Once you get a hang of how to use that, they're the easiest ones. So if you can find that, that's better than what you have, but what you have is fine too.
So what should I not do when I'm opening a bottle of wine? I mean, is it okay if I drill down past the bottom of the cork so that when I pull it out, you see the tip of the end coming out of the bottom of the cork?
It happens. Corks are all different kinds of lengths, so it happens. It just kind of depends on how tight that cork is in there and what you need to do. So that's fine if that happens too.
Is there an amount of time that I should wait after uncorking to pouring?
Well, if you want to decant a wine, so you want to let the air and oxygen get in there to open the wine up, pour it right into a decanter if it's a red. If it's a white, an unoaked white, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio or Viognier, if it's not oaked, go ahead, pour that right into a glass, and it should be ready to go. And Chardonnays, a lot of those are oaked. they really don't need that much time to open up. Really, the wines that need opened up are the reds. The whites are usually pretty ready to go. This is generalization, but it works for most wines.
Okay. And Bob is, of course, frozen
yeah.
on mute and everything.
Am I frozen? Seriously?
Now you're back. You're back.
Go ahead. Back.
See, I'm telling you, this thing's a little cranky. But the aerators, the little things you jam in the top of the wine bottle, and they're supposed to kind of, I guess, are they intended to speed up that process in a way?
Yes. Yeah. So if you have an aerator for a red, that's great to use. It speeds up the process. If someone brings a bottle over for dinner or a party, you can use that to kind of open it up so that it's kind of ready to go quicker than just letting it sit. So yeah.
Now, is there a proper way to pour the wine?
I'm
going to pour
right into your mouth.
Well, not in I'm going to pour it in a glass.
All right.
And by the way, feel free to drink at home if you have a bottle of wine.
I've got some right here. Yeah, I've got some.
Excellent. So I'm going to pour some wine in my glass, and I'm going to give a taste of it.
Okay.
And,
so what kind of glass is that, Mike?
I was going to say, you're using a wrong glass.
That looks like
it's a glass. It's made of glass. It doesn't matter what kind of a glass it is. I mean, the rest is just mood and lighting and setting. And I'm just here by myself. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anything.
Jared, show him your glass again and kind of explain why that glass is better.
So he has a dry red. It's a blend. I have a dry red blend in my glass as well. This is a typical red wine glass. I have actually with me a whole bunch of different glasses that I can show you. So something else, Mike, I think you need to find something like this. That would be very appropriate for what you're drinking. So this would be a typical red wine glass. It would be good for Cab or Merlot or red blend or Bordeaux or any dry red wine. If you want to do a lighter dry red wine, I would recommend something like this. A little fatter at the bottom. The opening's just a little bit smaller, and the bigger red wines need a larger opening for that air to get in to soften the tannins up. And a Pinot doesn't quite need that, so that's why a lot of the Pinot glasses, the opening's not quite as big as your typical standard red wine glass. Now, if you're going to do a Chardonnay, you're going to want something like this. A little bit smaller, shorter, and fatter. Now, this would be for an oak Chardonnay. Chardonnay that spent time aging in oak, maybe gone through some malolactic fermentation to give it kind of some creamy characteristics. This would be a great one for it. Now, if you're out on the patio and you just want to pound some chilled, unoaked wine, you want a little bit of a smaller glass. Now, look at the size difference between the red and the white. The white doesn't need that large opening to open up. It's kind of ready to go, but that red needs that little bit more of a wide lip to open up. And if you guys are into sparklings, this is a typical sparkling flute. And the reason why it's so tall and the opening is small is because you want to capture the bubbles in the glass as long as possible. And that preserves the flavors, the sparkle, etc. And I have another glass to show you. So if you ever go to a winery or a tasting and do a tasting at a winery, they usually give you a glass kind of like this. It's kind of like it's like all these glasses combined together. So it kind of covers everything. So Mike, for you, probably something like this would be good since you're not drinking too much.
By the way, is there a name to that glass?
This glass?
Yes.
This is usually referred to as the ISO or something to that effect, and it's a simple tasting glass. Tasting rooms across the world will use something about this size. There's some variations in it, and it's okay for your red. It's okay for the white. It's okay for the sparkling. It just kind of covers the bases. So that would be something for you.
A tasting glass is
what a tasting glass. It's not specifically for red or specifically for white, because when you normally go to a tasting room, you're going to try a couple whites, couple reds, maybe even they have a sparkling or a port or a nice wine or something. So they just usually use those general glasses there.
And I have to say, this $10 bottle of wine is extremely good.
You're liking it? Good.
I mean, as much as I can like wine, it's excellent. I mean,
I've been told in the past, like there's and tell me if you agree with this, Jared, is that the best wine in the world is the wine that you like, and that can be a $10 wine, it could be a $100 wine, it could be a $10,000 wine. It really don't get hung up on how much a wine costs. Get hung up on how much you enjoy it, because that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a great statement. I think a lot of people kind of get hung up on that. The best wine is the one that you like. But in saying that, I do urge people to try everything. If you go to a tasting or a wine show, or maybe you're at a restaurant or at a party at someone's home, try everything. Try a little bit of everything just to kind of get a better experience. Try what's out there, because there's about 10,000 grapes that are made. But there's about 1,300 that are used for real winemaking. So there's tons of different varieties, lots of things that you can taste, lots of things to do with them. So just keep trying, even if it's a grape. Let's say you try Chardonnay, and I don't like Chardonnay. I just don't like it. Well, there's so many different types of Chardonnays out there that to say I don't like Chardonnay, well, you haven't tried enough Chardonnay, because there's oak Chardonnays. There's oak Chardonnays that go through malolactic fermentation. There's unoaked Chardonnays like the Chablis region in France, completely unoaked, very crisp and refreshing. So you kind of want to try everything. And then on top of that, every vintage is a little different. So different weather patterns, different winds, soil changes, all that kind of stuff influences the taste of wine. So it changes from vintage to vintage. So just keep trying and experience everything, and don't just kind of get hung up on a particular style or grape, because there's, like I said, 1,300 different grapes that you can drink. So there's a lot to choose from. Don't get hung up on one.
And there's, you get a bottle that says, Cabernet Sauvignon, so you get 6 bottles. They're all going to be wildly different, and it's the same grape.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I've also found too that in some of the nicer restaurants, a lot of times the wait staff is going to have some really great advice for you to try something new. And like, hey, I really want a dry red tonight. I want to expand my horizons. A lot of times you ask a waiter or waitress, they'll have a good recommendation for you if you like to expand your horizons. That's how I found a lot of wines.
Yeah, exactly.
So, go ahead, Mike.
No, go on.
Oh, no. So I want to talk about what I've been doing lately. It started over the summer, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm trying not to drink so much beer for a couple of different reasons. And I like red wine, but I don't necessarily like the temperature in the summertime. So I started, and it was a red blend. It wasn't very expensive, but it was one that we liked. And I started pouring it over ice. And I watched you cringe there, and and I found that it almost mutes the tannins completely, and it brings out a little more of the berry flavor. It was a little more refreshing. Now I can't stop. I probably wouldn't do it with a bottle of wine that I paid more than $12 for, but for the $7 bottle of Cocobon that we've been getting.
Okay.
Which I like Cocobon anyway. I think it's really an enjoyable and easygoing red blend that is super cheap, and I've been pouring it over ice, and I've been loving it.
Okay. Well, I have a suggestion for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be out on the patio and it's the summertime and you want to drink a red, I would suggest a couple different grapes that are a little bit lighter, maybe a Pinot Noir. a Gamay. You might know the word Beaujolais. So Beaujolais is a region in France, in the Burgundy region, and the grape they grow there is called Gamay. Those are very light. And then another grape that you've probably never heard of is called Zweigelt, and that's going to be found mostly in Austria, maybe a little bit in Germany. But those are all lighter bodied reds, and you can put a good chill on them, and they would be better out on the patio in the summertime than a heavier red blend or a Cab or a Shiraz. It would just be a little more refreshing. So I would recommend that, or even a rosé.
What? So if I'm chilling a red wine, where do I want to get it to as far as temperature goes?
So for storing wine, all wine, a great temperature to store at is 55 degrees. So if you want to do, so like here, I have a little wine fridge. It's set to 55 degrees. And if I have anything in the house, like a Pinot Noir or a Gamay or a Zweigelt, I put it in there. And I set it to 55 degrees. And if we want to drink it, I pull it out. It's ready to go. So that would be a good temperature for drinking that kind of wine. You could put it in the fridge and get it a little colder if you wanted, and that would be fine. It might mute some of the flavors, but it'd be better to do it with that as opposed to a Cab or a Bordeaux or anything else.
And I know. Sorry, Mike. Do you want to go ahead and ask a question? Because I was going to say we have some we have some questions for Jared on Facebook. I didn't.
Sure.
I was just going to read those.
Okay.
I was just looking at those.
All right. Which one do you want? I'll put it up on screen.
Well, I was going to do Melissa Seibert. She asks, "What wine would Jared recommend for spritzers?"
That was the one I was going to as well.
For spritzers, okay. All right. Well, you could make a sangria. So if you're familiar with a cocktail, right? So cocktails, they use gin, bourbon, whiskey, rum as the base, and then they add other things into it. But if you wanted to do a sangria, you use wine as the base. So sangria is actually not a wine. It's actually a wine tail, similar to a cocktail. But you add other things in there. A lot of people add 7-Up, Sprite, something lemon lime kind of pop to it and make a sangria spritzer out of it. You could, if you didn't want to do that, you could use an unoaked white if you want, a Pinot Grigio, a Sauvignon Blanc as your base for some kind of a wine spritzer. That's probably what I would use.
So the other question that I would like to ask you is, how do you rate the wine that you recommended for me? It's a $10 bottle of wine. So how would you rate it?
For $10, it's very good. I'd probably give it a B or B plus rating for the school. It does its job. It's a great little blend. It's got nice fruit to it, a little bit of earth. It's smooth. The tannins are soft, and it's a great party wine. Like you were asking for, something to bring. Like he stated out before, red blends are great to bring for parties or gifts, because you just don't know what people like. And this is kind of a place where red blends kind of come together. It's a road where things come together, and you can kind of satisfy multiple people and styles in there. So I'd give it a good rating.
All right. So the other question would be, do I need to spend a lot of money for a good wine?
You don't. However, there are definitely some price ranges where you'll start to notice. Once you get into wine, there's some price ranges that you'll notice that, yes, these things really are smoother. They have been aged longer in oak. The quality is better. You can start to taste that, but sometimes you might not get it right away. That might be something you have to work into. But you do not have to spend $100 on a great bottle of wine. There are great $10 bottles. There are great $15 and $20 bottles out there that are wonderful, that I would give as gifts, that I would serve at my house or just drink every day. So you do not have to spend a lot of money for your wine.
What's the most common question you get? When someone comes in, what's the most common question that you get?
I get a lot of questions. Probably one of the ones that I'm noticing more and maybe have taken more of an interest in is do you have any champagnes? That's one question that I get a lot at my particular store. And then I always ask them, well, I do have a couple, but is there a specific one you're looking for? And I think there's some misconceptions about champagne and sparkling wine. I think generically everybody refers to a sparkling wine as a champagne. And people get very disappointed when I tell them, well, you're probably not really looking for a champagne. You're looking for a sparkling wine. Most champagnes are a little pricier. Even cheap ones are in the $30, $35 range, and that's the cheap side. So there's a lot of other sparklings out there that people are really drinking, but calling champagne. So I have to kind of go over that with a lot of customers that come in. And I could, if you want, I could go over a little bit about that with you, but it looks like Karaoke Bob has a question for me.
I do. Well, some of it isn't there? I heard that unless the sparkling beverage that we call champagne comes from the Champagne region of France, it can't be called champagne, which is why
Correct.
you have these fruits and Prosecco's and those sort of things. So
Champagne is a region in France. And if you're a wine grower there and you make sparkling and you use, you follow the region's guidelines for making a sparkling, you have to have specific grapes. And the three most important grapes are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. There's a couple other ones, but you really don't see them a lot. The two most important are Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And then the third would be Pinot Meunier. So they have to be from, an assortment of those grapes. And they have to be, the second fermentation has to happen in the bottle. So there's regulations that you have to follow in order to put champagne on the label. And those would be true champagnes. And anything outside of that region, not allowed to call it a champagne.
That's what I thought. We have a couple more questions on Facebook.
Sure.
I don't know how much time you have, Jared. I don't want to keep up.
Keep going. Let's go.
All right. So let's go with Chuck. Chuck wants to know what you think about the quality of box wine.
There are actually some very nice box wines. I'm going to say a lot of the ones from Spain are doing a really good job. You're going to find some Tempranillo and Garnacha, as the Spanish would say, in some box wines, and they're actually pretty darn good for the price. California, they're kind of all over the place. I would say one of the better brands that you're going to see out there is probably Black Box, if you're familiar with it. They usually come in 3-liter boxes, but they're kind of all over the place. But I think as people are getting more into wine across the country and they're looking for values, I think box wine has improved and made leaps and bounds in recent years. And I think we'll continue to see them getting better in quality and in price.
And then we've got a question from Mark Steibert. Do you have any glow wines? And I don't know, I've never heard of this before. Wines that can be heated for fall.
So I do. I have one from Germany, and I'll be getting more here this fall for the Christmas season. And it's actually pronounced Glühwein. And what it is, Glühwein, yes. Glühwein. And what it is, it's a red wine base, and they add in cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, honey, all sorts of spices in there. And if you were to visit Germany, probably Austria and Switzerland at that time of year, they have a lot of Christmas markets, and that's what they would serve while you're walking around the Christmas markets. And it's mulled on, here, if you do it at home, you'll have to mull it on a stove. You don't want to boil it, but you mull it on a stove, and that's what Glühwein is. And there's some variations to it. There's a couple wineries here in Ohio that do something similar. I've seen some wines out of Michigan that are, again, doing something similar, but that's where it comes from is traditionally Germany, and that's what it is.
And speaking of, I'm glad you brought this up because I quite like Ohio and New York and Niagara as a It's a very distinctively different animal altogether.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about some of the grapes that we see in this region that are really unique to this area of the world. And from what I understand, the Western Reserve area that we're in was really the America's first wine region.
Yeah. So there's multiple species of grapes. Probably the most important species is the Vitis vinifera. That's Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Riesling, Moscato, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir. So those are all the Vitis vinifera family. But the Ohio wines that you were just mentioning, the Concord, Niagara, Catawba, Delaware, those come from a species called Vitis lambrusca. So they produce two totally different types of wines. The ones here in Ohio, the Vitis lambrusca grapes tend to be sweeter. They have a completely different taste. They usually don't get near as high in alcohol as the European or Vitis vinifera grapes do. So completely different style. Yeah.
So my question for you right now is, what do you think about twist-offs instead of
twist-offs? Yeah. So twist-offs really don't indicate quality, poor quality or great quality. There's people all over the world using twist-offs. In fact, you'll see Australian and New Zealand wines of very high quality and very pricey using twist-offs. I think I read something recently that over 70% of Australian wines, even the high quality ones, are using twist-off or what they call Stelvin closure. And then the New Zealand ones over 90%. So there are quality wines made around the world using this Stelvin closure.
Because really the point is to keep the air out of the wine while it's in the bottle, right? So
Correct.
Whether it's cork or whatever you called it, the point, where I think we obviously get caught up in tradition on a lot of things. And I think we probably get caught up in tradition on the cork because, well, that was the thing that was available that kept the air out hundreds of years ago. Well, now we have other ways to do that actually make it far easier to get at it and get drinking as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so definitely the old traditional cork looks way better. It's much more romantic. It looks better. It gives a better presentation, but it doesn't affect the quality of the wine at all. But I prefer cork because it does look better, but I drink plenty of wines all the time that I absolutely love that have screw tops.
What's a question that you wish people would ask when you come in? Is there any question or is there anything that you just are like, I wish they would ask me about this? Like they're maybe dancing around what do you like to be asked when you come in?
Well, I personally like more of the dry Vitis vinifera grapes, and I don't have as many people asking me just common questions about that. So not specifically, that's kind of what I would like. More questions about kind of the grapes that I've studied over the years. Because when you do a wine course and get a certification in wine, mostly you learn about Vitis vinifera. You really don't learn too much about Vitis lambrusco. You learn of it, a little bit of detail, but it's not a focus. So I wish I had people asking more questions about the Vitis vinifera, the traditional grapes, Cab, Merlot, blends, all those different aspects of it. I wish I got more questions like that, but that's kind of due to the shop that I'm in and us being kind of new. We have been around for 3 years now, but we're still drawing in new customers. So that would be the reasoning.
There's another question on Facebook, and I have kind of, I'll ask them both at the same time.
Sure.
Lori is asking why it's bad to leave your wine in the car, because she said that you had talked about that before. And kind of along the same lines, my mother always said, if you're going to open a bottle of red, you better drink it before you go to bed.
Yes.
Right. Or how long, if you say you can't power through a whole bottle of wine before you go to bed, like how long can you keep, corking that thing up and coming back to it before it really starts to decline?
Well, so about the car thing. So especially in the summertime, you really don't want especially your red wines that more have a cork. You really don't want those getting too high in temperature. It will basically boil the wine. So that'll ruin the whole taste there. Now, once you open a wine, preferably at the correct temperature, and serve it, you really have maybe a couple days to drink it. This is a kind of a generalization. I've seen Malbecs. They're great. You open them, you let them air out for a couple hours, and they're phenomenal. And you think, well, I'm going to finish the next glass tomorrow, and maybe it'll be even better. But it's already dead. But there's other grapes that you can do that too, and it does. It tastes better the next day. So I would say, in general, once you open a red wine, give it a couple hours. If it's a really nice one, you spent money on it, the quality's good, give it maybe a couple hours to open, but enjoy it that evening. That would be my recommendation. Yeah, they really don't last that long. Whites last a little bit longer, especially if you have them corked or sealed back up and you put it in the fridge. They'll last a little bit longer than the reds, but they will start to die as well.
What are some pairings? Give us some pairings that maybe people are not aware of.
So it's been a while since I used to run a wine dinner every month, and I would allow the chef to tell me what he was making. Sometimes it'd be salmon, steak, swordfish, whatever. And I would pair the wine with whatever he wanted to make, since he was the cook and he was doing the cooking. So I would pair the wines with that, but it's been a while since I've done it. But some just general advice that I can offer people is you want to kind of match the dish with your wine. So you don't want a heavy, meaty, full dish matched with a light-bodied Pinot Noir or a Pinot Grigio, because you're not going to taste that light-bodied wine. So you want heavy to match with heavy, medium to match with medium, and light to match with light. So that's a general rule. It works well for most things. Another thing that you can do is, if you are doing some kind of an Asian dish or something with a little bit of heat or spice to it, you can pair it with some sweeter wines, and that'll completely alter the taste of that sweet wine. So if you were to taste that sweet wine on its own, you're going to get a lot of sugar, you're going to get some fruit to it. But when you pair it with a spicy dish, it cuts the heat and spice from that spicy dish, and some of that acidity and fruit shines through, and it becomes a much better pairing than if they were separate. So those are some things that I can kind of offer to people. Now, ultimately, drink what you want to drink. But reds do go better with red meat, and whites do go better with chicken, fish, salads, that kind of thing. But ultimately, drink what you want to drink.
And I went to an ice wine tasting, speaking of Ohio wines, and something that they said that I wasn't aware of, and tell me if this is kind of true of other sweet varieties or varietals of wines that you would drink, where they say don't pour it into your mouth where the tip of your tongue will get it, because the tip of the tongue gets all the sugar, and if you once you taste that, then it's gonna mute a lot of the other things. But to let it go back to like the rear taste buds to get some of the florals and some of the other things, and then allow it to allow this to experience the sweetness. Do you find that that's something that you would also do with something that's not an ice wine or something that's super sweet?
I could definitely see that. If you want to get that fruit and whatever kind of herbaceous elements that wine might have, you might want to just do that, because, like you said, the front of your tip of your tongues is where you're going to feel all that and taste all that sugar. So if you want, you want that fruit, you want the sugar, but you want the fruit, the acidity, you want that all combined. So it is maybe a good idea to see if you can grab that in other aspects of your mouth to get the full flavor of it.
All right.
Well, I thought the mortgage business was complicated. I mean,
it is.
You know, I
I think
use up all my brain on that, and you know, when I get to the wines, I'm just lost. But now I have Jared in my life,
Yeah. You
and
know, all
so
businesses are complicated, Mike. I mean, I worked in pizza for a long time, and there's more complexity in the pizza than you would guess.
I think it's just like any other profession. You know, you're never going to know everything about science or math or history. Once you start learning and you start to get to a level where you have some decent basic knowledge, you go, crap, there's way more to learn. I'm never going to learn it all.
Right.
No matter how much you read, how much you study, there is always something to learn. And in wine, there's just so many vintages, things change. Basic things do remain basic and the same, but there's a lot to learn. Just like any other profession, any other academic subject, you'll never know it all.
Bob, all I know is I never get nervous ordering pizza. If I got to go to a dinner party and bring wine, I'm always nervous.
You should probably be nervous ordering pizza. There's a lot you can make some big ordering mistakes depending on where you go, because it's, you know, it's the great pies are tough to duplicate. There was a place that I used to go to in Firestone Park that isn't around anymore, and I've never tasted anything like it. It was absolutely the best, and it's gone. It's just gone. Kind of like, you know, kind
I'm
of
not
like
allowed to. I'm not allowed to have pizza anymore. As you know, I've got somebody in my life that restricts what I eat.
Yeah, I know.
I have an overseer.
Good for you.
Yeah, I was eating tempeh and cauliflowered rice before I came on the show. So pizza's not in my
cauliflower
realm.
is very, very versatile. Very versatile. Jared, I have one last question for you before we go, and make sure also you let us know where we can find you and ways that we can get more of this great information. It's been really terrific. But one thing I wanted to ask for all those joining us tonight. Wine clubs. I did this for a while. You know, those subscriptions you pay into, and then once you're up to a certain level, you order a case, and it gets shipped to your house. And I've had some really terrific experiences with that. What do you, from a you know, a value standpoint, is it really worth what you're paying for these? And is it a good way? Do you find it a good way to experience new wines and broaden your horizons?
I think that some of them have done a very good job of picking out wines, price versus quality. I think maybe you have to look a little deeper into the company and make sure they're picking from, you know, better quality vineyards. But my wife and I are actually members of a couple different wine clubs, but we have actually been to the wineries. And I suggest if you can't take a trip out to, you know, California, Washington, or Oregon, or over to Australia or France, there's a couple wine regions that are not that far from here that are a great weekend getaway. You can experience the wine and tasting room in person. There are multiple, and these are world-class wines. New York, near the Finger Lakes, and Virginia have some excellent wines that you could easily get to in, you know, half a day's trip and make a nice weekend out of it and taste some great wine. So, you know, if you want to do the, you know, mail in wine, great. If you want to experience it, but you maybe don't have the money to fly out, or you don't have the time, but you do want to experience this stuff, I highly recommend going to New York or Virginia, and they make some terrific Vitis vinifera grapes. They also do make some Vitis Lambrusco. They've got some wonderful tasting rooms, and you can actually go there, taste the wine, talk to the people, and maybe join one of their wine clubs. And that's what my wife and I have done, and they're excellent.
It's what we're doing.
What's that?
That's what we're doing this weekend. Actually, my wife and I we got a bed and breakfast in Ashtabula, and we're going to take a wine.
Okay.
So, have any recommendations? I'm ready for it.
Well, I know Ohio actually does a very good job with their ice wine. So if you like a dessert wine, yeah, we do a pretty good job with those ice wines. And there's a lot of wineries in Ohio that are they're going, I wouldn't say necessarily going away from those Vitis Lambrusco grapes, but they are shipping in grapes from other states such as California or Washington and making the wine here. and they're doing a pretty good job with that as well. So there's a lot of things here in Ohio. Ohio is just getting better and better. Yeah, so look at those places, check them out, and see what they have to offer.
I'll tell you what, Bob, anxiety mitigated. Now, when I go to a party, I just get in my car and go down Whipple Avenue to Home Buys and go in and talk to Jared.
That's right.
And I can just be in a complete empty head. I can just walk in and go, here's what I've got. Here's what I'm serving. And I've actually been in the store a couple of times and watched Jared in action. I mean, he is thorough in his explanations to the patrons that come in. I really recommend going out and having a conversation with him at the Home Buys, because it's well worth the trip. And obviously he's a wealth of knowledge that's worth the time and energy. So
yeah,
Jared,
wine's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Wine's supposed to be fun.
Jared, how about coming on for a holiday wine session? Because I'm
sure we could
that there's all kinds of holiday wines and information that we should have for the holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about wines to pair with turkey for Thanksgiving. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's multiple things that you can do all across the board.
We will definitely do that. We'll have you back, and we really appreciate your time and your knowledge. It was wonderful. So I learned a lot tonight.
Yeah, and
I hope you did.
Do you have a website or a way
so if you want to come and speak with me about wine, I do work at Home Buys, which is at 5651 Whipple Avenue in North Canton. I'm there full time, mostly during the week, a couple Saturdays here and there, but I'm always willing to answer questions, guide you in the right direction. I'm going to be honest with you. Tell me what you want, and I'm going to show you. So wine's supposed to be fun. It can be intimidating, but someone like me is kind of there to guide you through it, ease you through it, and make it comfortable for you. And hopefully maybe you enjoy it, gain a passion for it, whatever. But at least you come to me, you'll be more comfortable. So, and come meet me. I'll give you my card and you can have all my information, and I'll be more than happy to help you out with whatever you need.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jared.
Yep.
Thank you
very much, Jared. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I had a terrific time tonight. And I was the only one not drinking wine. And that's only because I can't get to it right now. And I would have had my Cocobon over ice. But now I know I can try some of these different lighter varietals, maybe chill them out and still get that same refreshing thing without, because I mean, it really does. It's going to, and one thing I'm glad I didn't tell him was that one night I crushed up a grape popsicle and put it in a wine glass. The red wine.
That sounds good.
It was actually, it got really good. It got really good as it melted. But yeah, when you put it over ice, it will, obviously waters down over a little bit. So, and you feel better about everything.
Well, I will definitely have to listen to this episode over and over and over again, because I know nothing about wine. I've got some friends of mine that when I show up to visit and they have a party, they always serve wine, and they always give me the wine that they try and don't like.
Because, you know what? I tell you what, there are some wineries around here. I mean, of course, in the Canton area, there's Gervasi. They have a wonderful restaurant there. You and me and Mrs. Me, and I don't know what you're going to do, but we should all go out to dinner, and we should broaden your horizons, and you can kind of find out, because like Jared said, all that matters is that you like it. It doesn't. Nothing else matters.
And I told him I like really sweet wines, and he said, "Well, that's the sign of a beginner."
Mm-hmm.
And
it's really true.
And by the way, Gervasi is an excellent place to go to visit. And last time I was out there and I was with some friends, and they were like, get some wine. And I said, give me the sweetest red wine you've got. And they got a really sweet red wine. I mean, it's like drinking dessert.
And a lot of times, and the next time we have Jared on, I'm sure he can speak to this, but when you go, I know a lot of times when we've gone to wineries and then you get the flight, And usually how they arrange it is it's either sweetest to dry. I think they start with dry and then it works to the sweetest. So it almost, by the time you get to the sweetest one, it's almost too much. And then that's kind of how you start to get from that rise from that beginner stage that you were talking about.
Yeah. But you know what? Being the guy that drinks the wine that nobody likes, that gets me invited to a lot of parties.
Yeah, I guess so.
We could go together. You could be the know-it-all.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm not the
Well,
know-it-all.
but you said earlier that you're a know-it-all. I know that. But I'm trying to give us a juxtaposition right now.
Right.
We could juxtapose each other, Bob.
Yeah, maybe I'm more dogmatic than know-it-all. I don't necessarily have to have expertise to be dogmatic.
That's exactly right. Dogmatic people come across as know-it-alls. So
that's right. And that's why we're here. And I didn't know that. So that way I can put more things in my arsenal to really win at trivia, which is the only thing I want to get.
The goal of your life is to win trivia.
That's true.
Well, and again, thank you to Jared Gray for coming on, and go to Home Buys on Whipple in North Canton and talk to him. I mean, he's phenomenal in person. And I have to say a special thank you to Mark Seibert for recommending him. Mark, great job. Keep the recommendations coming. And if anybody listening has any recommendations for show ideas, you're always welcome to give us your thoughts and what you'd like to see and what you'd like to learn about.
I think we should scrap this whole idea and just become a wine show. And then Jared just joins us every week and we sit around with our new bottles of wine and we talk about it.
Well, you're just trying to get me off the show. That's just your way.
No, of course, that's what I'm trying to do.
First, you set me up with these cockamamie lighting scheme that I've got to try to figure out right before the show.
Really, really good now. I don't know something mystical happened between the time you got on and after I gave you advice. Things got better.
The advice you gave me was I was doing something wrong. That was the advice. You're not doing it right. Show me did you download this? Did you do that?
But asking questions, just trying to help you.
But let me tell you what. Let me tell you the thing that made my evening.
Okay.
If you scroll up very early on in the show, Deirdre said, my lighting looks good.
Oh, I put it on the screen. It was the first thing I put on the screen.
Deirdre, when you get a compliment from Deirdre, and by the way, her name is Starinky, not Starlink, not Stalinky, not Starsinski, Starzinski, Stardinky, Starminky.
Look the same. So
I think you just come up with any letter in the middle of her name to just to say that.
Stardinky.
When you get a compliment from Deirdre, you're living very, very well. And by the way, Deirdre does all our graphics for the show.
That's right.
And she does all the Stoffer mortgage graphics. She does fantastic. So she's available to hire. So use her. She responds. So anyway. So Bob, as always, fantastic job. Go ahead.
Thank you. And it's great that you have somebody like Deirdre in your life to offset Mr. Completely Unreliable like me. So
Bob, you are very, very reliable. You are very emotional, but reliable.
Thank you.
But you guys do a great job for me because I've got Deirdre who's steady and calm, and I have you just off the charts, and that's that. I like that, and I kind of get to sit in the center of it, and I it kind of passes through me off to Deirdre because I've got to kind of calm it down for her,
Of course. Totally.
And believe me, Bob, I am still working on sleep apnea. We are going to have a show on sleep apnea.
I'm still waiting on my CPAP. So hopefully that maybe if you get the guest, maybe my CPAP will mystically arrive and then I can start to sleep.
Well, I told you what the problem is. And until you address that,
Speaking of sleep, we're going to lose all of our viewers here in about 6 minutes. So we should probably
All right,
say
Bob.
goodbye.
Bob, you get the first and the last word. Go for it.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for another edition of I Didn't Know That, where we come on every Tuesday night and give you some little drop of knowledge that you didn't know, that I didn't know, that Mike didn't know, and we all leave here a little smarter than we got here. We'll be back here next Tuesday night with hopefully another guest. I don't know. We'll just keep it a secret again. Again, thanks to Jared Gray. Thanks to Mike Stoffer for having me be involved. Thanks to Deirdre Starinky Thank you. You're welcome. And everybody that joined us tonight and all the great comments. And don't forget, if you liked what you saw and heard, make sure you like and share that on Facebook. And we'll see you here next week for another edition of I Didn't Know That. Have a good night, everybody.